The great hall of the Ashford Kingdom had never looked so beautiful. White flowers climbed every pillar, silver ribbons hung from the high ceiling, and hundreds of candles filled the room with a soft golden light. Today was the day Alpha King Draven Ashford would marry Princess Seraphine of the Ember Pack. It was supposed to be a joyful day, a day that would finally bring peace between two kingdoms that had fought each other for years. Draven stood at the front of the hall in his formal black coat, his face calm, but his eyes distant. To everyone watching, he looked like a strong king ready to secure his kingdom's future. But inside, something felt wrong. It had felt wrong for 3 years, ever since the night he made the biggest mistake of his life. 3 years ago, Draven had rejected his true mate. Her name was Lyra Hollow, a quiet young woman who worked as a healer in the lower village. She was not born into nobility. She had no title, no army, no political power. When the ancient bond appeared between them, marking her as his true mate, Draven had panicked. His advisors warned him that a mate from a common family would weaken his position. His father's dying wish had been peace with the Ember Pack, and that peace could only be secured through a royal marriage. So Draven made his choice. In front of his own council, he rejected Lyra, breaking the sacred bond and shattering her heart. He remembered her face that night. She had not screamed or begged. She had simply looked at him with quiet, unbearable sadness, then walked away and never returned to the palace. Rumors said she left the kingdom completely. Draven told himself it was better this way. He told himself duty mattered more than feelings, but the guilt never left him. It followed him through every meeting, every meal, every lonely night in his enormous, empty bedroom. Now, standing at the altar, waiting for Seraphine to walk down the aisle, Draven tried to push those memories away. Today was about the kingdom, not about the past. The doors at the end of the hall opened, and Princess Seraphine entered, dressed in a stunning ivory gown with silver embroidery. She was beautiful, graceful, and confident, exactly the kind of queen the court had always expected Draven to choose. The crowd rose to their feet, whispering in admiration. Seraphine smiled at Draven as she walked toward him, and he offered a small, practiced smile in return. The priest began the ceremony, speaking about unity, duty, and the joining of two great packs. Draven repeated his vows when asked, his voice steady, even though his heart felt strangely heavy. Seraphine's hand trembled slightly as she reached for his, though no one seemed to notice. Just as the priest lifted the ceremonial binding cord to tie around their wrists, symbolizing their union, the enormous doors at the back of the hall burst open with a loud crash. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the early morning light pouring in behind her. The room fell into complete silence. Slowly, she stepped forward, and gasps rippled through the crowd like wildfire. It was Lyra Hollow. But she was not the quiet, broken healer everyone remembered. She walked with the confidence of someone who had faced the worst pain imaginable and come out stronger. Her dark hair was braided elegantly, her dress simple but regal, and on her head sat a crown, one that made every noble in the room freeze in shock. It was the crown of the First Queens, an ancient relic believed to have been lost over 100 years ago. According to old pack legend, the crown could only be worn by a true, unbroken mate of Ashford royal blood. It was said to glow only in the presence of a bond so pure that no rejection, no distance, and no time could break it. And it was glowing now, a soft golden light, pulsing gently around Lyra's head. "That is impossible," someone in the crowd whispered. The bond was broken. Everyone saw it happen. Draven stood frozen at the altar, his eyes locked on Lyra. His mind raced, trying to understand what he was seeing. He had rejected her. He had broken their bond with his own words. So how could the crown, a symbol of unbreakable mate loyalty, be shining on her now? Lyra walked slowly down the aisle, her eyes fixed on Draven, though her expression was calm, not angry. Guards moved to stop her, but the pack elders, seated in the front rows, raised their hands to hold them back. They recognized the crown's power. They knew that whatever was happening was far more important than palace protocol. "Lyra," Draven finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How is this possible?" She stopped a few steps away from him, looking not at Seraphine, but directly into his eyes. The bond was never broken, Draven. Not truly. What you rejected that night was a lie you were told to believe. Confused murmurs spread through the hall. Draven shook his head. I said the words myself. I ended the bond in front of the council. You said the words because you were manipulated into saying them, Lyra replied, her voice steady, despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. That night, before the rejection ceremony, someone placed a manipulation spell on you, a spell that clouded your judgment and convinced you that rejecting me was the only way to save your kingdom. Whispers turned into gasps. Seraphine's face went pale. Lyra continued, her voice growing firmer. After you rejected me, I did not run away in shame like everyone believed. I traveled to the Shadow Clans, groups that live far from royal politics, where ancient pack knowledge still survives. I spent 3 years learning about bonds, about old magic, and about crowns like this one. I did not learn magic to seek revenge. I learned it to understand why, even after rejection, I could still feel you, why the bond never truly disappeared. She lifted her chin slightly. The crown only responds to a real, complete bond. If our bond had been truly broken that night, it would never glow for me. But it did the moment I stepped through those doors. That is proof, in front of everyone here, that the rejection was never real. It was forced. The hall erupted into chaos, nobles turning to each other in shock, elders whispering urgently among themselves. Draven felt his entire world tilting. He looked at Seraphine, whose hands were shaking, her eyes wide with fear rather than confusion. Seraphine, Draven said slowly, dread rising in his chest. Do you know anything about this? Seraphine did not answer. Instead, her father, standing near the front row, stepped forward, his face tight with anger. This is nonsense, he snapped. The girl is clearly lying to disrupt this wedding and steal power for herself. But one of the eldest pack elders, a respected woman named Mother Yarrow, who had served 3 generations of Ashford kings, rose from her seat. The crown does not lie, she said firmly. It has not glowed in over 100 years. If it responds to her, then her claim is true, and we must know why. The elder turned to Seraphine's father. Lord Bramwell, were you involved in the manipulation of our king 3 years ago? The hall went silent, every eye turning to Lord Bramwell. His confident expression cracked for just a moment, but it was enough. Sweat formed on his forehead. I do not have to answer to accusations from a commoner. You do not have to answer to her, Mother Yarrow said calmly. But you do have to answer to the Elders' Council, under truth binding, if we invoke it. The mention of truth binding, an old ceremonial practice where a person could not lie without physical consequence, made Lord Bramwell's face turn white. He glanced at his daughter, then at the crowd watching him, then finally, his shoulders sank in defeat. Fine, he said quietly. Yes, I arranged for a spell to be placed on the king before the rejection ceremony. I could not risk him choosing a healer's daughter over my Seraphine. Our family has waited generations for the Ember and Ashford thrones to unite. I was not going to let a common bond ruin that plan. Seraphine gasped, turning to her father in horror. Father, you told me the bond had faded on its own. You said it was fate, not manipulation. It does not matter now, Lord Bramwell snapped, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Draven felt a fury rise in him unlike anything he had experienced before, but beneath the anger was something deeper, an overwhelming wave of guilt and heartbreak. For 3 years, he believed he had made a painful but necessary choice. In truth, his own voice, his own decision, had been stolen from him, and Lyra had suffered because of it. He turned to face her fully, ignoring the whispers around him, ignoring Seraphine standing frozen beside the altar. Lyra, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I am so sorry. I did not know. I should have questioned it. I should have fought for you instead of accepting it so easily. Lyra's eyes glistened, but she did not cry. I forgive the manipulation, Draven. I do not blame you for a spell you could not see. But I will not pretend the last 3 years did not happen. I built a life without you. I found strength I did not know I had. I am not the same woman who used to wait quietly for your attention. I know, Draven said softly, and I am not asking you to be her again. The hall remained silent, every guest holding their breath. watching a moment far more powerful than any wedding ceremony could have been. Draven turned to the crowd, his voice steady and clear, despite the storm of emotions inside him. This wedding cannot continue. I will not build my kingdom's future on a lie, and I will not marry someone chosen for me through manipulation and deceit. He looked at Seraphine, his tone gentler now. Seraphine, I do not believe you knew the full truth. I hope you find happiness that is real, chosen freely, not forced by politics. Seraphine, tears in her eyes, gave a small, sad nod. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the hall, her father following behind her, the weight of his exposed lies crushing any dignity he had left. Draven then did something no king in Ashford history had ever done in public. He walked toward Lyra and knelt before her, right there in front of the entire court. I cannot undo the pain I caused you, he said. I cannot erase 3 years of separation or the humiliation you suffered because of my mistake. But I am asking, not as a king demanding loyalty, but as a mate who failed you, for the chance to earn your trust again. Lyra looked down at him, her expression unreadable for a long moment. The crown on her head glowed steadily, a quiet reminder of the bond that had never truly broken, no matter how much pain had come between them. Respect is not given because someone kneels, Draven, she said finally. It is earned through actions, through time, through consistency. I am not the same girl who left this palace 3 years ago. If you want a future with me, you will have to prove, every single day, that you are worthy of it. Draven nodded, rising slowly to his feet, but his eyes never left hers. Then I will spend every day proving it, however long it takes. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking over the kingdom, golden rays spilling through the tall windows of the great hall. The crowd, still stunned by everything they had witnessed, began to murmur again, but this time not in shock, in quiet hope. They had come expecting a royal wedding built on duty and political gain. Instead, they witnessed truth exposed, injustice corrected, and a bond that had survived betrayal, distance, and heartbreak. Lyra stood beside Draven as the morning light touched the crown on her head, making it shine even brighter. She was no longer the powerless healer's daughter who had once been cast aside. She was standing exactly where she belonged, not because a king had chosen her, but because she had chosen herself first. The kingdom's future was no longer certain, no politically arranged peace, no perfectly planned alliance. But for the first time in 3 years, Draven felt something real standing beside him, instead of something forced. As the doors of the great hall opened once more, letting the full light of dawn pour into the room, the people of Ashford watched their king and his true mate walk out together, side by side, ready to face whatever came next, not as strangers bound by duty, but as two people finally choosing each other freely. The story ended there, at dawn, with nothing certain except one truth. Some bonds, no matter how deeply broken they appear, are simply waiting for the right moment to be made whole again.